Awesome. Well, thank you, Katherine, for being my first podcast guest. Super excited to have you here. So besides being someone who I think is at the frontier of this whole online course space, which is really new itself, you're also one of my favorite people just in general for being awesome and super supportive and yeah, just such a pillar of the community in the online course world. So thanks for being here. For those of you who don't know Katherine, she needs no introduction, but I'll give her one. And so she is a former high school teacher and an EdTech co-founder. And these days she works remotely from Australia, working with course builders around the world, helping them build courses through accelerators like Maven. And she also works with DAOs, so decentralized autonomous organizations, for those who don't know the Web3 lingo, helping them build Web3 courses. So what's really cool is not only is Katherine in this new online education space, but she's actually building courses in both Web 2 and Web 3. So I'm really excited to kind of kick off this podcast series with her, which is really just intended to highlight some of the powerhouse women who are really behind some of the biggest courses online right now. So thank you, Katherine, for being here. I don't know if you want to just kick off by kind of walking us through maybe the past year. I think you've been working with Maven for roughly a year now, and that's kind of launched into a bunch of other different projects with the Web3 space, but also with some really big name creators. So I don't know if you kind of want to just walk us through, like, how has this all come about? What's it been like? Yeah, just I'll open it to you.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come and hang out with you and be on here for the first podcast of this first episode of this amazing podcast. I appreciate you so much. And I'm so glad that we met through Maven. But yeah, I've just had a really amazing journey in the past year. I've been incredibly lucky to meet amazing people like yourself from around the world, even though I'm over in Australia. And sometimes I feel like everything happens when I'm asleep. So this is the first time I've had the chance to wake up on time to come and hang out and do some fun things with people over in the States and in Canada and all these crazy places. So no, I'm incredibly lucky to have fallen into this. How I kind of got into it, starting with Maven, and that was about a year ago. So being part of the founding coach team is I kind of like reactivated my Twitter account that'd been sitting there for about 10 years. And somehow came across Wes, and I just really liked her writing, and kind of just kept following her. And then she just posted this one tweet one day and was like, hey, there's this thing called Maven, we're looking for coaches to do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, I'm going to shoot my shot. I looked through the job description. I had no qualification in a lot of the things, like no formal qualification. And the only thing I had going for me was that the coaches were needed to help people build courses. And I thought, well, I'm a teacher, that's my jam. So I thought, if that's the only thing I have, I'm going to shoot my shot and see how I go. And I was lucky enough that I was able to be part of the founding team and have done a few cohorts with them since, with the accelerator, which is how we met and how I've been able to kind of pester you and follow you and cheerleader for you for this whole time that we've known each other. So and that's kind of how it all started. And then just meeting incredible people, incredible experts and incredible creators along the way just opened up opportunities for me that I never would have dreamed of. Yeah, sure, the time difference was a bit interesting, getting up at like 4 a.m. in the morning to be on these calls and to meet with these instructors was totally worth it, because I was like, oh my God, there is this incredible world out there that I don't even know about that happens when I sleep. So been connecting with people around the world, and through there I've just had some crazy opportunities, both, as you said, in Web 2 with, through Maven mostly, and then meeting people through there and, into Web 3 these days as well. So some pretty cool opportunities and that I never thought, like, if you had told me 1 year ago, I would have been like, shut the front door.
Love that. Yeah. And it's so true. I think it's funny. Actually, someone asked me like how I heard of Maven and like Rite of Passage and all these courses. And same as you, in terms of it was Twitter. But what's funny is, like, you're saying you dusted off your 10-year account. I had never been on Twitter in the first place. I missed the first wave. So, and apparently the last decade. So it was funny actually when I switched into learning design and tech, when I started studying at the Harvard Extension School, one of the professors said to us, if you want to keep up with the industry, because I'm someone who's like a fiend or was on LinkedIn with reading articles and stuff. She's like, well, you have to get on Twitter if you're an instructional designer. And I was like, what? Because at the time, my impression of Twitter was it was like Donald Trump firing off his latest rant or like Kanye West or something. So I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that was like an actual place people go to learn. So as soon as she said that, I got on, and initially was just like super overwhelmed with who to follow. Like, there's so much to take in that I think it's very chaotic, and I didn't really know anyone using it. But like you, Wes was one of the first people I found and was like, oh my God, her content's amazing. Just so exceptional, the work she's done. And I think she's such a powerhouse and inspiration to so many of us, again, because she's just shattering that glass ceiling of, again, from the outside looking in. I think a lot of people think this field is so male dominated, and without a doubt, like there is some truth to that. But I think there's also so many powerhouse women, like I said, who are behind the scenes propelling these courses and just responsible for the impact they're having. So it's nice to see people like her at the forefront, kind of, you know, winning for all of us. And like I said, smashing glass ceiling, and same thing. And to your point about like Twitter, just finding it, I think that's what a lot of the instructors now are also finding their audiences, whether it's Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. Probably LinkedIn and Twitter, I think, are probably the biggest. I don't know if you'd agree in terms of like how people are filling their cohorts, because that's similar to you. Like I've been running courses and stuff for an organization at a startup hub, but I never had to do the course marketing. So that's like a whole beast we both had to learn. And I'm curious for you. I know you have your kind of stadium analogy in terms of your advice for first time course creators. So do you want to kind of just break that down for people? Because I think that's probably one of the most misunderstood concepts about marketing your course at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, having the privilege to be able to have worked with quite a few sort of industry experts, it's just been really interesting to see the time and time again some of the problems that some of these instructors come up with. I guess I wouldn't say problems, just some of the challenges that they have when they first come in. For example, when we were working at Maven with some of those instructors, right? And one of them was always going to be marketing. The other one was just feeling like you needed to teach everything that you knew in your brain in 3 weeks, you know? So, you know, to your question about marketing, there were so many instructors when we were having those one-on-one conversations that felt like they had to fill a stadium. You know, they didn't feel good when, you know, they had less than 10 students for their cohorts, right? Which I think we need to flip the switch for that. Like, you know, we need to flip that upside down, because I think having 10 students is probably ideal if you're a first-time creator and you're trying to find your feet with a lot of things, because you're trying to do a lot of things for the first time. You're trying to teach, you're trying to create, you know, slides and materials, you're trying to run the back end, so that, you know, course moderation stuff. If you don't have the budget to actually have someone in, you're also managing that. You're managing all the queries, all the questions. And so I think there's this, not a myth, but it's just like we see people who are really huge names in the industry, you know, pulling in hundreds and hundreds of students, and we all think that is the, you know, benchmark for your first cohort, when it's really not. It's just unrealistic. And so I think a lot of instructors get that burnout because they feel like they have to be everywhere. So all of those social media platforms that you mentioned before, they feel like they have to be everywhere all the time to be able to get, you know, 50 to 100 students, which I think is really unrealistic. What I've seen has worked really well is when we were working with coaches who have that stream or have that social media platform that they have a good presence on, whether that be Instagram, email, LinkedIn, Twitter. I know that you and I both work mainly with people who are on LinkedIn and Twitter, but that's just where, you know, where their potential people are. And if they just double down on that, just double click on that, and then get, you know, people who have over time grown to trust them already, it's a lot easier to pull in those 5 to 10 students into your course, have it as a few iterations. I think the first 3 versions, I guess, of your cohort, of your course, can be that 10 to 20 students. And then once you've kind of got a grasp on how you're going to do things and what people actually want to learn, then you can start thinking about scaling up. And I know that doesn't sound like that bells and whistles that you think, or the promise of CBCs. I think that's really unrealistic. For example, Build a Second Brain, it took them ages. It took them years to be able to get to where they are now, right? So you can't expect yourself to be 100-person cohort the first time around, hire coaches, hire, you know, course moderators like Maven does. I think it's really unrealistic. And an example of that is I'm working with Ryan with the NFT course. And we deliberately keep it under 10 because we want to overserve, over deliver. And we're 5 cohorts in, right? Because we still want to get that right, and we still want that personalization. And once we've kind of understood how to systemize that, then we'll look about, you know, growing that even bigger. But for the moment, I think the intimacy is really important for us in our course.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, you just touched on so many golden nuggets for anyone listening. I think like the intentionality around keeping it small, and I'm glad you used the Building a Second Brain example, because I think it's up there with Rite of Passage and these other huge courses where people see them and think like, oh yeah, this is the dream. I'm going to make like 6-7 figures with my course, like first leap. But really, when you put it in perspective, it's like a novice runner saying, I'm going to run a marathon like in 3 months. It's like, well, first maybe try a 5K and then see how that
Yeah.
goes and then build up. So when you
Yeah.
put it in that perspective, it seems so obvious, but I think, yeah, people get caught up in the excitement of wanting everything to go fast and wanting to
Yeah.
see like the return on investment. But I like what
Yeah.
you said about the intentionality around making it a like a community, almost like a minimum viable community that your course stands to grow from. And when you keep it small, you're able to over deliver and
Mhm.
really build those relationships. And then those students, become your biggest evangelists. And the same way, like even as a coach, like, for like you said, as Maven, like being a founding coach, and some of the instructors we've seen go through there, they're the biggest evangelists of Maven and stuff. And it's because you give people that really personalized approach. And I think too, you just have to think of it as like when people say like, oh, what's like a learning designer or like learning experience designer? But I always say like it's because it really is an experience. It's not like it's not just like a process. You're really creating a customer experience for people. And to your point as well, you just can't rush the marketing. I think that's where
Yeah.
I know we joke with the marketing coaches and stuff too about like what's more important, pedagogy or
Yeah.
marketing. And definitely a lot of people fall into the marketing camp because obviously
Yeah.
first of all, you have to make money. Like some people are doing this as their full-time employment, like they're quitting their job and putting all of their eggs in this basket.
Yeah.
Others are doing it as like another revenue stream, and like they're not doing it for volunteering purposes. Like they want to make money. So that's fair. And then a big part of it with the pedagogy is you have to market it well to get the right people in, because if you get the wrong people in, then of course they're not going to get the results and they're not going to be content with the experience. So there's a lot of like intentionality that goes around that hand in hand. But yeah, to your point, keeping it small, it's one of those things that I've kind of learned too, is you can't underestimate the marketing, but at the same time, you can't rush it. Like I know from working with different course creators, like we said, you can actually throw the pedagogy stuff together pretty fast, especially if you work with someone like me or you, where we're like, okay, we can just like bang this out really, really quickly, as long as the person has the expertise, of course, and the team to deploy it. But the point is, in terms of like the marketing, building that trust and like you said, that reputation, I mean, that just takes time. You can't do that overnight. It has to be earned. And I think that's where people can put like undue pressure on themselves, thinking I'm going to sell out, like you said, a couple hundred seats in like a matter of a couple of weeks. And what I really like, and it was actually one of the instructors who went through Maven had said to me, is she wasn't too stressed about, even though she hadn't been doing like massive marketing outreach, she's like, but I've done a lot of one-to-ones with people in my network who already regard me as an expert. So I think that's like something that's massively underutilized, is those one-to-ones, small group meetings or like free workshops, that sort of stuff, to get to know people and really build that kind of minimum viable community. Like we said, is really how you scale it long term. Like you have to start small and then go. What would you say is the other, I guess, like the second piece of advice you give to people or find yourself repeating most to? Because obviously you get, especially with each new cohort, there's a lot of the same questions, right? Because people go through a similar process. So what would you say is your second most golden piece of advice for people starting out? I guess particularly with people with small audiences.
I guess with the marketing piece, which is one of the big that we see, that tension between marketing and developing a course is going to be there, because cows come home, but if you've got, no one's going to want to come back, right? You might 50 for the first round, it's going to come back, but you could have a really good notes about it. I really don't have any, but I think if we flip on the other side of things, a lot of industry experts don't have a background in teaching. Fine, like that's but what comes with that is that because they're passionate and they want to know, and all the experiences that they've had, it's just like trying to suck out all of the water in this world and just in a cup, right? And it's so much that they literally fire hose, right? And the approach is everything I know I'm going to do. I'm going to do that 5 hours, and it's just gets out of hand, right? And I think the reason for that is to come in, or a lot of creators aren't sure the outcome they want for their students, right? Like if the question, if I on the heel of blah, what would that heel be? So what would my students be able to know and do with me? And it could be very small. It doesn't have to be like a whole meditation level. You're there for a specific purpose to get them a specific amount of knowledge and skills, and you need to make sure on that and over deliver on that. And I think the challenge is being able to what it is that you want to teach. And that obviously comes also with the students that are coming in. So through marketing, right? Are you coming in with really advanced students at the next level? Is it people who've never heard of the field before? So a lot of the Web3 courses are you who are interested, but really had the opportunity to fundamentals. Okay, well, if that's the majority of students, that's where your students is where you be a beginner, type student, and teach them everything, even more confuse them before. That I think that's really important. Instructors need to really define what is it they want their students to and know the course that you have. Just being, on, and for those and even more so by just adding to dilute the itself. That's the other thing to say. Just really to focus on what you want the students to achieve.
Yeah, no, it's good to always walk it back to the outcomes. And that's where kind of from the pedagogy perspective, people always laugh because I always repeat this concept of backwards design, but focusing on what do people have to be able to do? What do they have to be able to, what do they need to be able to know by the end? And, how do you help them transfer that to different contexts? And when you walk it back to that, it makes it really clear. Like you said, if you get clear on where they are now versus where they need to be, it's much easier to find out, what's the strategic roadmap to get them from point A to point B. Because one of the biggest challenges that I think people have with planning things out is it's very intuitive to think, okay, I'm going to teach someone this. What's the first thing I need to teach them? And then you start going forward like that. But if you don't start with the outcome in mind, then you might be giving them too much information, too much context, and then you'll never get to that end goal that you need to get them to. So if you start with the end goal in mind and then figure out what's the minimum viable path, then what's nice to have versus what's what you must do versus what's nice to have, could be cut, could be added as potentially extra stuff for people who want to do extra homework or something. So that's definitely huge. And also your point on the kind of fire hose with marketing, I think, again, a lot of us, especially those of us new to marketing, it can be really intimidating. So we're just sponges who want to do the best job ever. And we're kind of just grabbing every time we hear of a great tip, we're kind of jumping on it and trying our best to be, like you said, everywhere and be everything to everyone. But like you said, this is probably the biggest source of burnout, I would almost say, with people trying to get their courses off the ground is trying to be all over Twitter, LinkedIn, every platform you can think of, in every community. And like you're saying, someone said to me recently too, they're your march is much more effective if you can say, hey you versus hey everyone. So I think, getting clear on your marketing strategy is definitely something that you should make a priority and speak to someone who's a specialist in that if it's not your domain, because it is such an important part of your flywheel of getting more students into the course.
Yeah, something I want to double click on that you said was design component of what you were saying, very clear in the out. What it also does is it gives boundary conditions. You're always going with ideas because so much expertise and so much insight into you and industry that you're always give ideas. You're going to be, this, but I could teach that. But if you're clear, it gives you the boundaries or no. If it goes towards the outcome, it's a good fit. But if it's okay with putting that and going, as you said, maybe it's additional work if you, or does that become part of the next version of I can have another one. And that's totally, being able to define that, you will include everything gets anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get everything there, but nowhere. And you're sorry, I say I'm so used to my high school leave and they feel they've had a good, if you ask them about it, I can't really know what it is that the skills that I've now acquired. And that's a scenario, right? Testimonial that says, I'm not too sure what we feel like I had fun. You don't want that.
Yeah. Big time. And I forget what the quote is, but I went to some conference and I remember them saying I don't know if it was entertainment doesn't guarantee engagement or engagement doesn't guarantee education or something to that effect, but just meaning people could be having the best time of their lives. But once they get out of the course, there's a good chance, if they've just been having fun, that they haven't actually learned anything. And the thing that people forget too is learning is uncomfortable, right? They say there's no comfort in the growth zone. And so people have to kind of lean into the discomfort. And I think courses that do it well, like even, I've taken rite of passage and stuff where the instructors tell people like, this is meant to be hard. Like, this is like like a training, an intense training period before we like send you out. I think it was like as if you're going on like a rocket ship or something, like astronaut training, like super intense. And the analogy is just meant to help people understand of like, this is supposed to be uncomfortable, frustrating, difficult, like within reason, of course, like not brutal for anyone, but there's all these support mechanisms to help you get through it, because that's how you acquire the skills. Like you have to challenge yourself. If you're just coming in and you don't want to be challenged at all, I know you are a massive gym enthusiast. Catherine's a hardcore person who works out. So, imagine going to the gym every day and just kind of like pedaling along on like a spin bike, or having no resistance, or, never lifting weights. You definitely want to be as strong physically or mentally as you are now. So I'm sure you can kind of attest to that in that sense for why you should encourage like instructors to tell the students it's going to be hard, but they should lean into that.
Yeah, it's part of, setting high expectations for your students, right? They will rise to the occasion if you give them the opportunity to do that, and if that's baked into the course that you have. So I don't think that there's a reason why you should shy away from things being difficult, because the feeling on the other side, I'm sure you can think of anything in life where it's like it sucked when you were doing it, when you got through it and you knew you were going to get through it. You just felt so good about it. You'd put yourself through it again, like, Spartan races and that sort of stuff, where it just sucks in the moment because you're running through mud and it's raining and it's wet and you're trying to like do all these crazy things. But at the end, like everyone is so elated all the time. And I think, intuitively people know that that's part of the learning process. Sometimes we get lazy though. We get lazy and we're like, oh, I just don't want to put in effort. But that, I'm sure the students that you vet to come into your course kind of expect that. And it's okay to be very upfront about it and go, look, this could be hard, but I'm here, so we will get through this together. But just know that I have really high expectations for you because I know you can do it, and I want you to get the most out of this course and your time with me. And I think students actually really appreciate that. Like no student really wants to just go on and coast, because it just, you don't feel like there's a lot of growth. You just feel good about yourself, but there's no real, growth that has happened during that period. So
big time. Yeah. And I think like you said, being explicit, I actually think that's better. Like I think not saying it, like, yes, students kind of know, but I think, again, like just coming back to even like rite of passage, for example, them telling us like, it's going to be very hard and we have high expectations of you, but you're going to make it through there. Like all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm sitting taller. Like I feel up to the challenge, because yes, it's going to be hard, but I have people who are supporting me, and that's worth, really leaning into. So it's definitely a huge piece of it, I think. And that's why I think the CBC model too is great, because it's not just the instructor. Let's say, someone was teaching us too right now. It's not just them telling me it's going to be hard. It's like me and you are looking at each other thinking like, okay, we're in this together. Like we have that thing of like, oh, are you brain fried now? I am too. Like that was awful. So you get that 100%. Kind of like, like empathy, commiseration, whatever you want to call it.
Right, well, that's why we've connected for so long, right? Our experiences as being like Maven coaches in the background being like, oh my God.
Yeah, no,
but always knowing that at the 3 weeks, we're like, oh, yeah, we made it. We were always going to make it. But, it was always that challenge that kind of brought us together and kept us moving forward as a coaching team, because everyone, different challenges, different specific challenges for the instructors, but, and racking our brains to figure out ways to make sure that they achieve as much success as possible. So I guess, we were bonding through the same thing, and here we are, right? Like almost a year later that we know each other.
And I think that's what's so cool about it. Because you're like, no one person has all the answers. And what was cool is, and similar to like the coaching team and like mentor teams for other courses, it's like we have enough shared like common interest experience that we can relate to each other. But then when we're not sure about something, it's like, okay, I need your help on this. Like, what would you do? 100%. And I think like we've talked about this many times of how it's cool when you get to be a coach or mentor on one of these courses, because you get to learn from the, the company running it, like the amazing team who puts it together. Then you get to learn from the other coaches and mentors, and then you're learning from the instructors. Because I think we both talked about this too, we also had so many moments where we're like, how am I teaching this person how to do something? Because some of the people coming through these accelerator courses, they're so accomplished in their own right. They're such experts. And like, we feel so junior, and even just like so much younger for some of them too. So it's like, how are we coaching you? It sounds crazy, but then you're like, okay, we do have something to add, because we're teaching them a specific skill set of how to package theirs. But I think even just the term coach for someone like me was funny, coming from a startup hub where the startup coaches are very like accomplished entrepreneurs who have run multiple businesses. So I'm like, how am I going to coach someone by comparison? But it's a different context. And like you said, you realize that you can still add value, and then we get to learn from these cool people at the same time.
100%. I mean, like, I don't know about you, but I found so many moments where instructors who are coming in, I was like fangirling so hard and be like, oh my God, I know this person, but play it cool, because I'm here to coach and I'm here to help them teach. So just like chill out. But getting overwhelmed with just, I don't know, with the caliber of people who we get to hang out with in terms of leading and industry experts, I was just in awe. And I kind of took the opportunity to soak up as much as I could about their knowledge and expertise, because that's our job, right? Our job is to be able to see that and to be able to bring the teacher out of them to actually help people learn that. And I think this is kind of why I started my online journey, right? I mean, with teachers, I love education so much because of the opportunities that it can bring and the doors that they can open up. And I've been very, very privileged in my life that I've had opportunities to go to school and do things. And I'm here now. And I've had the opportunity to teach within a traditional context. So in a school, right? So where you have teachers who train to be teachers, and then they go in the classroom and they teach their thing. But I've always thought, and people are always saying, oh yeah, but sometimes teachers aren't passionate about their thing. Sometimes they're not 20-year experts of their thing. They're teachers. And I'm like, okay, well, like whatever, we're trying our best. But it's kind of like, I've always wondered, what does it look like if you take someone who's incredibly passionate and has so much experience in the industry, and you just sprinkle a little bit of pedagogy? Like what is the shift in student outcomes that can occur when that happens, right? And that's why I think CBCs is a really great, for me, just like an experiment to see, well, is there a change in outcomes when you have someone who's really fun and excited about their thing, who can teach now a little? Like, does that mean that the learning journey is just, it's like the level, like, just expanded, the experience is expanded because you've got these people who actually have really a lot of experience in what they do and have just built the knowledge over time. And I think it's wonderful. We get the opportunity to learn from these industry experts, and I loved seeing the students. And when these creators go into their virtual classroom and do their thing, because it's just like, it's magic because these people are so passionate about what they're talking about, and you've got students who are just hanging on their every word, and it just creates an incredible atmosphere when you people like you and I just come in and go, hey, maybe just if you structure it like this, or potentially just say it like this, just that little teaching spice, you sprinkle that on there, and it's just like, it's incredible. So I think that's why I keep coming back, and I keep getting excited about waking up in the AMs in the morning to be able to hang out with people who want to just share what they know.
Yeah, it's such a good point too, because when I worked at the startup hub, so before kind of I joined you guys with Maven and took rite of passage and stuff. It was funny because the startup hub was part of a university, and so we had academics and then entrepreneurs who were working on programming. So it was this ongoing debate of who's better qualified to teach the programming, the entrepreneurs who want to do it their way versus the academics. And I have this conversation with people all the time, again, when we joke, like pedagogy, marketing. But I think, honestly, it goes hand in hand, because what I tell people is what's amazing about the entrepreneurs teaching is they have all this real world experience. So they understand the application better than anyone else. Anyone studying it, it's one thing, but to be kind of in the trenches, so to speak. So they have this credibility for getting results that I also think just instills a lot of inspiration in the students, because I think a lot of these topics that people are doing, they have dreams of achieving something in their career, building a business, starting a side hustle. So I think for them, it goes beyond just learning from people who know how to get results, but it becomes this aspirational thing too, of like their proof that this works. But then at the same time, I say, like, you need the academic principles, because first of all, you can help the students learn better, get better results if they're aware of their own learning. And also there's this huge risk, I think, that people think, okay, well, like, I know how to do this, so I'll just make a course. But you could have spent, your entire professional career building up all this credibility in your field. And then if you build a course that doesn't hit the pedagogy and stuff, and students don't get the results, or you think you're explaining it in a way that's working and they don't get those results, all of a sudden you've just put this huge dent in your credibility of, you've created this like money grab course that where people feel like a number on a treadmill and they're not getting the results they thought they would get. And the expectations are here like super high because, they see you as this really notable figure. So I think you do need both. And like you said, it's a mix of the two, and no one person has all the answers. But I think what's cool about this space is that, like you said, I would say most people are kind of leaning into this continuous, like, how do I iterate, make it better and better? And that's really cool to see and really, yeah, really inspirational. I know we're going long, so I'll just wrap up with, yeah, any
No
insights
worries.
into, someone was talking yesterday, actually, I was talking to someone based in Australia, and he was just talking about how the ed tech scene in Australia is so unique. So I don't know, any thoughts on what your favorite part of the Aussie ecosystem is at the moment, or just in general?
It's interesting. It's kind of blowing up in a lot of places. We've got quite a few ed tech startups who are starting to take quite a big piece of the pie from traditional players. You know, for example, I mean, the example that I have is like my day job is to write textbooks and manage textbooks and that sort of stuff, right? And super lucky that I fell into that job. But you know, you have publishers like Oxford University Press, Cambridge University Press, some of the players who've, you know, from America, Cengage, who are in the space and have been for a long time and have built that reputation and credibility. But now you're actually starting to get people who are more of a startup scene come in and disrupt that market. So it's been really interesting seeing how the resources that happen around schooling. So any of the LMSs or some of those types of apps and software is actually a lot of players are now starting to move into the space. And it's really interesting seeing how people are navigating and how schools are responding to it, especially I think off the back of COVID, and realizing that there's actually quite a few things that can happen online. And there's also a few things that can be streamlined and in terms of processes. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what we come up with and just how this all pans out, and how, like with any industry, how the old players respond to that and how quickly they can do so. So yeah, I'm just like, but all in all, I love it that the tide is rising, and that, you know, we're putting more effort and resources into education. I know the students don't see it directly sometimes, but I really believe that that's a really good thing for students. And I think that the outcome is going to be better regardless. So as much as we can help teachers and students, I'm all for it. If it's a game where it's startups versus old school players in the game, like, so be it. It just means that overall the kids benefit. So I don't really care. Like, keep going, keep it going. So that's, yeah. So yeah, really interesting watching the space, lots of money going into it, but we'll see how we go.
That's awesome. And I love that the tide is rising. That's a great analogy for Oz.
Yeah. The tide is definitely rising. I mean, not in a good way, not like global warming.
Yeah. No, that's what I mean. It's awesome. And what's cool is like you're becoming, well, you are such an asset in that space too, but especially with your doing work around the world, like remotely, and then whether it's Web 2, Web 3. So it's cool that you're at the forefront of this like industry, but then it's also exploding locally is pretty cool too. So really awesome
yes,
stuff.
I'm very lucky.
Yeah. For people to keep up with all the cool projects you're working on, where should they find you? Is it Twitter? Is it your newsletter?
Probably Twitter. I'm not as active just because I'm trying to actually do things in the background.
Too many jobs.
I'm not saying that people who are on Twitter don't do it. Sorry. I at the moment, I'm not very good at being online and as active as you are. But yeah, like, connect with me through Twitter. And if you're thinking about, similar to you, Ali, I love course creation. I love education in general. So anything to do with education, if you want to just have a chat. But I really do enjoy, when first time creators come in and they just have ideas. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, listening to the ideas and bringing that to life in a way that also brings out the best in that creator, I think is really, really fun for me. And that's where I've had a lot of fun creating courses for, as you said before, Web 2/Web 3 sort of environments. And I'm like you, I myself am only just starting my Web 3 journey. So it's really, really been interesting. So yeah, like, reach out if you have ideas and you want a sounding board. I'm totally happy to have a chat with you around that. Otherwise, hit up Ali, because she's the bomb and she's a legend.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate that back at you. And yeah, you're definitely a great person to jam on ideas with for anyone who's thinking of doing a course. Because also I find for a lot of people too, it's intimidating of where to start. So I find people like you who are friendly and warm and just make it fun. Suddenly take the pressure off of like, oh, it's not this scary thing. It's approachable. We're going to have a good time. So very cool. Yeah. And final question, since I know gifts are your love language, what is your gift du jour, your gift of the day?
I think I can't describe this. I tried describing it yesterday and it was like, it went just down the poo hole. So I'm going to send it to you and then you can put it at the end of this so people can see one of my favorite.
Factor. She knows.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one. Stay tuned to the very end.
Stay tuned.
But yeah, I'll send it to you and you can share it.
All right, we'll do. Well, thank you so much for being my first guest.
Thank you.
Grateful. It's been so fun hanging. And yeah, keep doing awesome stuff and keep us all posted. Keep being one of the many women powerhouses powering all these cool online courses.
Thank you so much. Have an awesome one. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.